What do you know about electronics? Most people's interaction with electronic devices is the following. They choose it with the highest degree of care, buy it in a store or online, and then use it. As a general principle, we rarely know what has no need to be known. Our attention is limited, and in the digital age, it is a valuable commodity. So we only really care about electronics when we are buying something, be it a computer, phone, smartwatch, one of the many things that the 21st century has decided needed a bit of silicon. When buying a computer, we are almost always told about the brands of the CPU and GPU, and these brands therefore have gotten known by the public. But when buying a phone, it is far less common. Some enthusiasts may know about their brand new Apple or Qualcomm Snapdragon chip, but few people know about MediaTek or Unisoc, even though they have very sizable shares of the market. But these small companies, from Intel and AMD to Nvidia and Qualcomm, do not do all the work on these chips, far from it. In fact, of these four behemoths, only one manufactures chips themselves, Intel. Modern geopolitics has made the Taiwanese chip manufacturers famous, TSMC being the biggest of them, and made the topic of chip manufacturing a hot one. So today, we are going even deeper and more obscure to a small company that almost certainly made your phone possible, and that yet you have probably never heard of. ARM. To explain what ARM does, let's take a closer look at processors. Today, it is very common for computers, laptops and desktops alike to have two processing units, a CPU and a GPU. Each one of these have cores, which are where calculations actually take place. This is a simplification, but you can think of them as calculators that the GPU and CPU have at their disposal. Like a calculator, cores have different functions, different instructions they can execute sequentially. These instructions form the instruction set. CPUs and GPUs have different roles. CPUs, or Central Processing Units, are jack of all trades. They are made to be able to handle all the tasks that one might require from one's computer. Their cores, therefore, need to be able to do a lot of things and thus be physically big. Today, CPUs often have 4, 8, or even 16 cores, articulated together with various levels of cache and control. This relatively low number of cores when compared to GPUs is counteracted by a higher clock frequency of 2 or 3 GHz or even more. GPUs, or graphic processing units, are made to handle more parallel tasks. In other words, they are designed to execute simple tasks but on large data, and thus execute the same function a very large number of times to apply the function to the entirety of the data. Of course, image processing is an example of that, as when a transformation is applied to an image, a certain function needs to be applied to each one of its many pixels. But there are many other applications, AI training being quite a major one. In order to do this, GPUs have a very large number of cores, from less than 1,000 to more than 10,000 in Brognian GPUs like a RTX 4080. But often a slightly lower clock frequency than CPUs at 1 or 2 GHz. Now, how does this all fit into the electronic devices that you possess? In your laptop or desktop computer, as you might know, it is often quite straightforward. These two are made separately, encased separately, often not even on the same board, and sometimes even sold separately. There are three main reasons for this. First, it is possible to fit a CPU and GPU separately with all the interconnections necessary in most PCs, a luxury that smartphones do not provide. The second is heat generation. Desktop computers, but even laptops, have vastly superior power supply than smartphones, and are often expected to have similarly superior computing power. To achieve this, for reasons that we will not have time to explain, they need more power. This power consumption means heat generation, which means heat dissipation, which is made easier by two of the main sources of heat not being in exactly the same spot, under the same tiny radiator. The third one, as we will see, is simply that this is the way that we have made computers for a few decades, and change is expensive. What about your phone? Even though there are some exceptions, smartphones usually have what we call a system on chip. In other words, the CPU and the GPU, along with various other things, are on the same silicon chip, a few millimeters away from each other, allowing, among other things, compact casing. Now, where does ARM come into play? Well, remember that part about cores and instruction sets? Well, in the world of PCs, it is Intel's x86 architecture family that has prevailed, and is now the almost undisputed norm. But the x86 instruction set is large and a bit outdated, so for small processors like the ones that one would expect in a smartphone, smaller, more modern instruction sets and therefore architectures were considered. One of them was the ARM architecture. Today, billions of ARM processors are sold every month. They reign supreme in smartphones and all kinds of small electronics and embedded electronics. With Apple's M chips using ARM's architecture, they have an increasing presence in the world of personal computers. ARM is even trying to challenge the Intel x86 architecture on the market of servers, one on which Intel has been absolutely undisputed for years.